Welcome to the Savvy Dentist podcast with Dr. Jesse Green, the show where great dentistry meets great business. Listen in each week as we bring you an inspiring person who will share their story, ideas and business techniques to help you create a practice and a life you love. And now introducing your host, Dr. Jesse Green.
Hey guys, Jesse Green here. Welcome back to the Savvy Dentist podcast, the show where great dentistry meets great business. Today, I'm super excited to be having a conversation about a topic that's near and dear to my heart, and that is mastering the inner game of business. Because after all, if we get mastery in that part of our business, we can achieve tremendous things, not just in the business, but in life more broadly. And that's what it's all about after all. Our guest today is a psychologist with over 20 years of experience helping high-performance business owners and entrepreneurs, and she is at the top of her field in that space. Sarah Reiff-Hekking. She's got a PhD and over 20 years experience helping elite business owners and entrepreneurs achieve their best in their field. Our conversation today covers a lot of territory. We go deep, we go wide, we go everywhere. We talk about a bunch of things about learning how to say no to things so that we can say yes to the right things. A concept called life pruning, which I think is a really important thing if we're going to achieve things in our life and be effective in what we do. We talk about overwhelm, how easy it is to slip into that trap, but more importantly, how to recognize if we're getting there and what to do about it. We talk a lot about understanding how to adopt a growth mindset so that we can continue to grow, continue to evolve as business owners, and ultimately take those positive steps from good to great. We cover, as I said, a ton of different topics. It's the ABCs, the nuts and bolts. It's very practical, and what Sarah shares in this conversation is absolute gold. I know you're going to want to have a pen and paper handy because everything that she says is directly applicable to not just business, but to life more broadly. As you have your pen and paper handy to take notes, I'm going to encourage you to take down these two web addresses. The first one is truefocuscoaching.com and truefocuscoachingtips.com, because on those two websites, Sarah has a ton of resources. It's a really good website and it's really practical, and I know that if you head across there, you're going to find a whole lot of goodies there to help you on your journey in business and indeed life as well. So again, I really encourage you to go and check that out. On a separate note, for those people new to our podcast, please come and join us at the Savvy Dentist Facebook group. It's our community where we share training, tips and tools to help you on your way in the terms of the business of dentistry, help you get to the place you want to get to so that you can create not just a practice that you love, but of course a life that you love as well. But for now, it's over to Sarah and a conversation about the inner game of business, how to get better at it, and how to achieve all the things you want in your life as well. So without any further ado, here's Sarah. Sarah Reiff-Hekking, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to come and join us at the Savvy Dentist podcast. How's things in your world coming all the way from Boston?
They are amazing today. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited for this conversation.
Yeah, so am I. Look, I've been reading about your stuff now for a little while, and I've been checking out all the different pieces at True Focus Coaching, at your website there. And a lot of the things that you've got on your website, I'm really excited to talk about, because everything you talk about on your website is very similar to the stuff that we talk about here, and I certainly know that our audience resonates with. So I'm going to be curious to dig into those topics in a lot of depth. But before we do get started, I can't help but observe you've been in the field now for 20 years. You've got a background in psychology. Indeed, you've got a PhD in psychology. And I'm curious to ask how you found your way to working with entrepreneurs and business people. It doesn't seem like the normal or the traditional course for a psychologist.
You're right. It's not, though I think more and more psychology and business are being intermingled. I started out way back when I decided to get my PhD, really wanting to focus on mind-body wellness and clinical psychology. And I spent a lot of time doing both research and clinical practice. I actually used to work at a hospital and do government-funded research, as well as having a clinical practice with medically ill people. And what happened after a while was that I discovered that what I really like to do is help people go from good to great instead of not so good to okay, which is what a lot of clinical psychology is about. Not that that's a bad goal. I think it's an awesome goal. I just found that the thing that really fired me up and got me out of bed in the morning was helping people really get to that next level in their life and their business that was above the okay mark.
So when it comes to good to great and helping people transition on that journey, obviously you've seen a whole lot of commonality across the type of people you work with, business people and entrepreneurs. I'm just curious to understand from your perspective, what is it that seems to be the underlying driver for an entrepreneur or a business person? Because they're pretty driven kind of people. They get out of bed pretty early. They go to bed pretty late. They work pretty hard. What is it that drives a person to become a business owner or an entrepreneur in the first place?
Well, I love this question. And I think you probably know the answer as well as I do, Jesse, that what I see in business owners and entrepreneurs is really this spark to make a difference somewhere. And unless you have that spark and that drive, as you just said, that gets you up in the morning, that helps you drive your business, then it's really hard for you to be an entrepreneur. You've got to find that place that pulls you into the work that needs to get done to build your business and run your business and then keep it going.
And so, given the drive and the energy and the passion that goes into running a business, it's almost like raising a child in a sense, because it's your baby and you want to see it grow and nurtured. I'm wondering, as you've worked with hundreds and thousands of different business people, where do business people and entrepreneurs typically come unstuck? Where is it you see they're having challenges? Because if they're going from good to great, obviously they've got a lot of stuff already in place. It's working well. But what is it that trips people up and stops them from making that transition from good to great?
So I see a couple of things. One is I see that people take on too many things. They really try and do everything. And often entrepreneurs and professionals will try and do everything themselves, right? And I'm sure you hear this all the time from people that you work with.
Yeah, I'm a dentist, so let me do the bookkeeping because that's a good use of my time.
Yes. Oh my goodness. I just was having a conversation with a client about that this week. You don't like to do it, first of all. Second of all, you're behind. So let's just notice that it's probably better to pay somebody else whatever amount per hour it takes to get that done. So it's handled. So you actually have the numbers so you can run the business from a clear foundation. And also your time and energy can be spent doing something that you're awesome at instead of something that you hate and you're not so good at. So back to your question, though, about what I really see as problems for entrepreneurs and professionals. And it is this, so many things coming at you and taking on too much and really not filtering what you can do best, what is your greatest contribution to your own business. Or it may be your office if you're a professional that isn't running your own business. But it's really getting clear on what you can do best, what your strengths are, and trying to stay in that place as much as possible and get away from all of the beeping and buzzing that's pulling you from so many different directions these days. That 24/7 news cycle, the 24/7 email and Twitter cycle, all of that.
Yeah, it's really funny you should say that. I've got a good friend of mine James Schramko, who in my mind is one of the guys who's really ahead of his time. And I remember 5 or 6 years ago, he was talking about the importance of sleep and making sure you don't take your phone into the bedroom and all those sorts of things, because you're trying to get away from that 24-hour buzzing, beeping, constant attention seeking from your device or whatever is, I think, a really fundamental thing just for preserving good mental health anyway. But you spoke about filters, and I'm really keen to talk about filters because one of the things that we tend to talk about on our show is that you can do anything you like, but you can't always do everything. And so I'm curious to get your take on that, because if there is, I think you call it life pruning, to be done, how do you know where to prune, what to prune, how to prune, and where do you cut back to?
I love this conversation, and I think it's something that we all need to do regularly because it really is easy to say yes to many things, particularly entrepreneurs that are excited and energized by doing things with other people and also have really fast-moving brains. So it's fun to do lots of different things. So in terms of the life pruning concept, I like to think about your life like it's like a giant 100-year-old oak tree, or let's even say 50-year-old oak tree. That tree that it has such a strong trunk and beautiful strong limbs got that way because somebody at some point went in, whether it's a human being or nature, and pruned out the dead wood, so that that wasn't getting in the way of the tree growing and getting energy from the sun. And also cut away at those branches that were really crossing and at cross purposes and not adding to the strength of the tree. So when I talk with my clients and work with them more closely about this concept of you can do anything, but you can't do everything, I like to start with the concept of what are the most meaningful and important things for you in your life? And then how will you know that you've gotten there? And along the way, I have people do this exercise that I call life pruning that I usually don't share outside of my program. So don't tell people. You want to pay attention here. One of the things that you can do is really write down all of your jobs and roles and get a big, long piece of paper. And public announcement here, notice it's going to make you overwhelmed because we don't usually identify each and every role that we have. So for instance, I'm a mother, I'm a business owner, I'm a daughter, I'm a dog walker, I'm a taxi driver, I'm a cook, all of these things, right? And that's just off the top of my head very quickly here. But if you drill down into all your roles and jobs, and then just put one on each line on a lined sheet of paper, and then go through each one of them and ask yourself, what of those roles are meaningful to you and really feel important and core to what you want to do in your life? And it'll give you a really quick barometer about what you can start saying no to, because you have to say no to things in order to really say yes to the most meaningful and important things. So that's just a quick start into that life pruning process. And in terms of getting really clear on where you want to go, I like this filter of meaningful goals. And one of the things that when you and I were chatting just a little bit earlier, Jesse, we were talking about the fact that people often have so many things that they're saying yes to and so many goals. And some of those goals are goals that have been given to them by other people. They're not even goals that they care about. So when I work with people and I hear them saying, I'm having a hard time, I'm overwhelmed, I have too much to do, and there's this whole raft of things that I'm not getting to, that I'm not doing, I always ask them why they care about those things that they're not doing. And oftentimes they'll say to me, Sarah, I don't care. They're things that were given to me by other people. Or if they're entrepreneurs, it's like the bookkeeping, right? That stuff that needs to happen but doesn't really fuel me. I don't really love it, right? So they're not getting clear about who else could do that work.
So do you think that there's, built on top of that, do you think there's this sense of I should be doing it because I look at everyone else's life and I'm almost modeling someone else's life rather than creating a life? So I see someone who I aspire to, I assume that they're doing this, that, and the other, and so I'm going to model that. And is there something in there about being careful what we model as well?
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the things that I teach people all the time is we're all wired differently. So be careful what you copy. And what I mean by that is that, we're all humans. So our brain and our brains and our physiology is similar, but we're all born with differences in terms of strengths and weaknesses from a neurobiological level, in terms of our innate ability to plan and sequence and break things down into different pieces. And then on top of that, we all have different skills that we've learned or not learned about how to do those things. So one of the things that's really, really important to notice is that where you are right now in terms of your ability to filter tasks, prioritize tasks, plan activities over time has to do with how your brain you were born with, right? The specific skills that you were born with, strengths or weaknesses, and then what you've learned to do on top of that. So you want to really make sure that you're asking yourself to do activities that are in your zone of one, innate biological talent, but also in terms of things that you've learned to do well. And the other thing I like to talk about is this notion of what's called a simulacrum. Now, it's a really fancy word, and what a simulacrum is a copy of a copy. So for instance, when an artist is painting a picture, making a painting from a photograph. The artist is making a copy of a copy. And what's happening there is you lose some of the detail when you do that. And I think what happens all the time for us right now is that we are copying pictures that media gives us of what we think our life should be. It's simply not the truth. There's not all the richness in that picture. And so be really careful about what you do target and make sure it's real.
Yeah, I really love that, and I really resonate with that, Sarah, because one of the things that I probably, like you, is I look at different podcasts or listen to different podcasts, look at perhaps a few different videos, and I might see someone who seems to be, from the outside in, really doing so well. And I think, oh, that's a really good behavior to model or whatever. And then when I try to do it, it just doesn't feel like a fit. It feels like I'm wearing someone else's shoes. And, it's uncomfortable, it's a bit painful, and ultimately it slows you down. And I think what you've spoken about is, I think, really important. And to an extent, it's about knowing yourself. What is it that your innate abilities allow you to do? What you've got some skill at doing and you've developed some skill at doing? And, of course, what you love and what adds value to other people. So I really resonate with what you're talking about there. And I think that whole concept of being mindful of what you model is so important, because it's so easy to be drawn into the vision of someone else's life and think that's how it should be for us too. And I guess that's just not the case. So I really resonate with that.
Yeah, I hear a lot from people about when I'm helping them manage their time and their tasks in a way that helps them reach their goals and create the whole life that they want, that work-life blend that they're looking for. I often will hear people say things like, well, geez, if I could just get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and work out and do 6 or 7 other things before I hit the office, I'd be fine. And what I love about that conversation is that it points out this belief that that's the only way to set up your life for productivity. Now, there are people that do that beautifully, and they tend to be morning people that at the get-go, right? So if you're an evening person or an afternoon person, and that's when you hit your peak energy, it's going to be really painful to try and get yourself up out of bed and do your best work first thing in the morning. So really do notice what patterns and flow work best for you so that you can start to match up the activities that you like doing at the time that's best for you to do it. And there's no right answer here.
No, you get to create it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's really funny you should say that. I was talking to a client of mine the other day, Sarah, and he was saying, oh, look, I'm just not getting to the gym. I feel like I'm not exercising, not being in optimal physical health, and it's because I don't like to get up in the morning and I don't really want to go after work and blah, blah. So we created time in the middle of the day for him to go to the gym. And he's going, but you can't do that. I said, well, why not? Who wrote that rule that you can't do that? Yeah, so break the rules.
Absolutely. And so here's the great thing about being an entrepreneur and running your own business is that you can create those rules and you don't have to talk back to somebody else who's saying, well, you shouldn't work out in the middle of the day. If that's the best time for you to get out, get a break, re-energize your mind and your body with physical activity, then do it. I know lots of people that do, and they come back much more jazzed and focused, and they get so much more done in their afternoon because of it.
Yeah, and that's exactly what he's reporting too, is his afternoon productivity has skyrocketed, which is wonderful. So I think it's really good. Ladies and gents, you're listening to Sarah Reiff-Hekking from TrueFocusCoaching.com. Some wonderful advice and tips so far. So please find her on LinkedIn, find her on Facebook, and let her know how much you've appreciated those really important pieces of advice, because I know that it's going to be a massive help for you and your business. Sarah, I did want to talk to you a little bit about burnout, because as business owners, entrepreneurs, there is a tendency to take on a lot, which we've already spoken about, and it's important to say no and have those filters in place. That said, I know that there'll be some people who are listening to this show who might be saying, that's great, but right now I'm drowning in stuff to do. I've got a lot on my plate. I'm feeling like I'm just tiptoeing along the precipice. How do you firstly recognize burnout, and then, of course, or the potential for burnout, I should say, and then how do you take some remedial action now so that you can step back from that line and get your life in a better blend, which I love that word, by the way. I love that word much more than balance. I think that's a really good word. So how do you go from that burnout back to blend?
I love this question, and I've lived this a couple of times myself. So
Me too.
Yeah. And so once you've been there, there's either this embracing of that might happen again, or there's this fear of I just need to make sure I'm never there again. So notice who you are, because if you like to end up in that burnout zone, you're setting yourself up for failure. One of the things that I think is really, really important is to practice on a regular basis, taking 24 hours off in a row. So when people are burnt out, and I get it. I hear this from people all the time. Sarah, I don't have time to take 24 hours off in a row. I don't have time to get a good night's sleep. I don't have time to exercise. And what I know is that there is this click of the kaleidoscope that happens where, when you're looking through a kaleidoscope, Jesse, and you see one picture and then like one click to the right and all of a sudden it's a completely different picture.
Yeah, absolutely.
And one of the things that happens when we're on that treadmill of burnout, because that's really what it is, when you start to feel like I have to be working 24/7, you start to sleep less. You start to feel that sleeping less is actually the solution to your problem. You start to get snappy at your family and your coworkers. You may stop doing things that used to fuel you, used to be hobbies and habits that really helped energize you. When those things start to fall out of the mix, you're really in the danger zone. And what happens is we start to believe this myth that if I just work harder and longer, I'm going to get more done and I'm going to be more effective. And really the opposite is often true, that you need that time to refuel yourself, which refuels your focus. And that means getting a good night's sleep. It means eating healthy food several times a day, not one big meal because you're starving and, oh my gosh, I haven't stopped to eat in 24 hours.
Yeah.
Right?
So I'm going to eat 3 chocolate bars instead of a salad or something like that.
Exactly. It reminds me when I was in my academic job, oftentimes my nighttime meal would be like a Snickers and a Diet Coke before I went into an evening, right? And all that did was like jazz me up for the hour and then make it hard for me to wind down when I really did need to rest. So you want to start to notice those habits, and also the belief that if I keep working super, super hard, I'm going to get it. And if I do that to my own detriment, that's how everybody has succeeded. And I don't believe that that's true. If you peel back the curtain, anybody that you know is successful, and I really want you to talk to them and peel back the curtain, because this is where what you see on social media or on TV is not going to give you the full picture. Anybody you know who's highly successful has support behind the scenes. They have somebody they delegate a lot to. They have somebody who supports them in their weak areas or in the areas that maybe they're not even very weak in, but they just hate to do. So presence, the bookkeeping again. I guess that's one of my little dragons.
Yeah, look, and there's some people listening to this podcast. You know who I'm speaking to, so listen up. This is about the 100th time we've had this conversation. There's a few people I have in mind listening to this podcast.
Well, absolutely, and I think we've both been there, right? There are those things that you sort of pull yourself into kicking and screaming when you're starting to delegate it to somebody, and you feel mortified because, oh my gosh, they're going to see this messy part of my life. Well, guess what? That's what they love to do. So let them do it. Let them be in their zone of genius so that you can do the stuff that only you can do in your business and your life. And really, really important. And that's what the crux of getting clear on what you can hand off if you're headed for that burnout place, right? So anything that you can train somebody else to do is a good place for you to start to think about handing off. And anything that you're not the only one that can do, you need to be making sure you're handing that task to somebody else.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's so wise because, again, for most people in business, whether it's dentists or otherwise, they're often during the day in delivery mode. And then coming to the afternoon, evening and weekends, it's how do I now do the core business functions, whether it's bookkeeping, because we're picking on that, or other things. It's important to be able to hand some of those things off so you do have time for the other elements of your life that really matter, that those roles that you spoke about earlier, whether it's mother, father, husband, wife, all those other roles in your life. And if you don't create space for those roles, then the little itty bitty tasks that you don't enjoy are just going to creep in like ivy, getting into all the corners of your life and becoming a bit of a weed. So I think some pruning there is going to be helpful as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And even if it's not personal relationships, it might be a hobby that you're just dying to get to, that your practice feels more like a way that you bring in money, and you want to then be able to go spend some time doing something else that just refuels you so that you can do that. Notice that and make sure you make some space for it, because it is going to allow you to focus more clearly and easily when you are at work.
Yeah. So Sarah, I want to talk a little bit about an extension of this topic, and that is the topic of procrastination, because I suspect when you're feeling burnout, like when I was burnt out, I procrastinated, but procrastination is not limited to burnout, of course. It is something that is insidious in lots of different places. And so there is this concept of going, okay, well, now that I've created space, how do I actually become effective? How do I get the right things done? We've spoken about what are the right things, but now how do I actually get in and get things done? Because we've spoken a bit about time management and by extension, energy management. You're doing things at the right time of day. But how do we get past this concept of procrastination when you are feeling a little stuck?
I love this conversation because this is really the emotional piece of time management that people rarely give voice to. And it shows up with procrastination. It also shows up with overwhelm, right? They're both emotions that get in the way of us doing things that we know we need to do and that we're capable of doing. So the first step here is really to recognize what's overwhelming you. And I like to talk about procrastination or overwhelm, or it might be freezing or avoidance, right? So figure out the word that really resonates with you about the emotion behind what's getting in your way. I like to talk about that as though it's a dragon, a real live dragon that's 5 stories tall and breathes fire and has a tail that's going to knock over your house. So if there was a dragon like that lived in your village, you would want to know where that dragon lived. Yeah?
Yeah, completely.
So same thing here, these emotions that really get in the way of us doing things that we know we can do, we need to identify where they are and start to recognize what sets them off and what's either overwhelming you. And overwhelm is that feeling that often then leads to procrastination, right? It's that feeling of, I don't know where to start. There's too much to do. I just can't think straight. And that often leads to overwhelm or to procrastination. So you want to start to notice, where does that feeling of overwhelm start for you? Or what you might notice first is, oh my gosh, there's that thing that I needed to do 3 days ago that I haven't done yet, like the bookkeeping. We'll just keep with that example. Yeah. And then ask yourself, what is it that gets in the way of me doing the bookkeeping? What is it that overwhelms me about the bookkeeping? And start to get really clear about that. So it might be, well, when I get into the details, I get really bored with the data entry stuff. I just hate that data entry. It's a snooze. Okay, so notice that. And then the next thing you want to do is calm that inner fear discussion about, or that negative discussion about, wow, that task is really boring and I hate it. Okay, so you want to do what I like to call tame the dragon and create a positive conversation that's consistent with productivity there, that's consistent with getting the thing done. So it might be, it's really boring and I hate it. Guess what? This is something that I could teach somebody else to do. Let me figure out how to teach somebody else to do. And it might be more fun to teach somebody else to do and then just know that it's gotten done than for me to actually do it.
So rather than gritting your teeth and just, I suppose, toughening up in inverted commas, it's a matter of saying, you know what, this is not really lighting my fire. I need to, again, get rid of it and go from there.
Right. But there is a negative discussion about, oh my gosh, I'm the one who has to do it. I'm the business owner. I should know all of this. Well, yeah, you need to know your numbers in your business, but you don't have to enter every bit of data. You need a report and you need a reliable person that can do that data entry. And you need to be able to look at the numbers. You don't have to do the data entry. So really important to notice what is that negative conversation that you're having with yourself and be able to reframe it into one that's consistent with moving forward and productivity. Such as, guess what? Somebody else can enter the numbers for me and give me a report once a week, and then I can take a look at it.
Yeah. And again, the analogy we use there is when it comes to that, it's really about, I suppose, changing the self-talk. Is about changing the dialogue or the monologue you have with yourself around some of those things, and reframing it, hitting, like you used the analogy with the kaleidoscope earlier. It's about trying to change the conversation around that particular element, so you're not having that negative conversation. You're reframing it and going, okay, guess what? I've noticed this. Now I can do that. So I think the noticing part is really important. And I guess from your perspective, Sarah, as a psychologist, how do you increase awareness and how do you notice more?
Yeah, I love this question. And I want to give presence to not only noticing, but noticing in a non-judgmental way. All right. So what does that look like? That looks like, I scheduled to do bookkeeping 3 times this week and it's Friday and I still haven't done it. Isn't that curious? I wonder why. Right. So noticing in a non-judgmental way, and it takes practice. So give yourself some space on this one. And you might have to talk out loud outside of your own head to somebody about it, like a coach or a colleague. But really, really important to notice after the fact what has happened, what's causing problems for you, and then start to backtrack. So the first few times, you might notice several days later, oh, I'm not getting that thing done. Or you might notice because it's the thing that you keep copying over on your to-do list, or you keep saying to somebody else that you're going to get done and you're going to get to them, but you're not. So at first we notice after the fact. And then what you can start to do is start to notice sooner in time when you're pushing something off or it's overwhelming you or triggering something.
Yeah, I think that's so important. So, ladies and gents, please do hit pause, go back and just have a listen to all of that, but particularly that last section about noticing, because I think when you notice and you bring awareness to things, it allows you to, and again, critically with non-judgment, as Sarah said, it does allow you to then be aware of what's going on and to take the next step to try and resolve that issue. So it all begins with awareness. So I really, really resonate with that, Sarah. I think that's wonderful advice. And ladies and gents, please do take heed of that. I think it's going to serve you well. Sarah, I do want to talk a little bit about setbacks and failure, because I think if you're in business long enough, or indeed if you're alive long enough, you're going to have some setbacks and failures. And I wanted to ask a little bit about dealing with those and not letting them knock you off course, but at the same time, if there's a lesson, taking it and moving on. Do you have any particular thoughts or advice around failure and setback?
I absolutely do. One of the things that I talk to people about and I teach my clients about is something called the growth mindset. And this is a concept that's been well researched by a psychologist named Carol Dweck. And so you can look it up if you look up the book Mindset. And what she has done is she's contrasted 2 different mindsets: the growth mindset, which is this notion that anything you practice, you can get better at, with the fixed mindset, which is the notion that you're either born with a talent or you're not. And there's really not that much you can do to get it if you don't have it. So it's really, really important to make sure that you focus on the growth mindset and this notion that anything you practice, you can get better at. And when you make a mistake, that is great information to figure out how to get better at something. So I am a big fan of noticing failure, noticing what went wrong, asking yourself what went right also. Make sure you're looking at both sides of the puzzle.
Yeah, completely. Because I tell you, as dentists, we are trained to find fault. And so we might, our training is, you've done 90% of it brilliantly, but that 10%, and we spend so much of our energy on that 10% rather than noticing the 90% that went really, really well.
Yes. And that attention to detail that as a dental technician, if you will, as a dental scientist or as a practitioner, that's really important in terms of your patient's health, can actually get in the way of you building a business. Because most of the things that you need to do in terms of building your business have to do with good enough and out the door so that people know you exist. right?
Indeed.
So,
yeah, good enough is good enough, right?
right. So good enough and out the door with the marketing, good enough and out the door with new packages for your clients, new ways of letting them know about your services. And sometimes it's really good to know, wow, that particular promotion didn't work because now I have great information about what might work. So really make sure that you're practicing that growth mindset and knowing that anything you practice, you can get better at. And I want to just give a shout out to earlier. I said, we're all born with strengths and weaknesses. Yes, we are. And still, there are things that you can get better at if you practice. And there are things that you can get better at, you might not want to get better at. Right? You might want to bring somebody else in who's even going to be better faster than you are to complement what you're good at. So make sure that you use the growth mindset, particularly when you're coming up against failure, and that you couch failure in terms of what else is going well. So one of the conversations I have all the time with my clients is what went well over the last week. Let's notice that. Let's build on that. Because oftentimes we're so busy noticing what has not gone well that we forget to notice all of the amazing things that we are doing and where our businesses are flourishing.
I think that's so important just in life, isn't it? Don't you think as well? Because it's obviously we're talking about a business context here, but in life as well, to notice the good things and the blessings. One of the little exercises we do as a family every night is at dinner time, we'll sit down and we'll talk about our 3 good things of the day. Sometimes it's really easy to roll off 3 good things, but sometimes it's a little tougher as well. But consciously choosing to focus on the good things, I think is a really good thing as well, because it does help you see the 2 sides of the coin. You know, if there's been some challenges, sure, we'll examine that, but not at the expense of forgetting the good stuff in life as well.
Absolutely. And there's some really good science behind that. We know very clearly that when we give people that gratitude exercise, or one of several other just brief exercises that they can do, like a random act of kindness, send a quick 2-minute email or text to somebody saying something positive and nice to them, that when we have people do some of these exercises, they actually feel better. They're in a more positive frame of mind. And when you're in a more positive frame of mind, it's easier to learn, it's easier to focus, it's easier to get more done. So there's a lot of really good science behind these things. You just have to find the couple of activities that work for you and how you like to think about things that help you stay on that positive side of things.
Yeah, and as you say, that growth mindset, seeing a setback in the context of all the other things that are happening and knowing that you can learn from that, knowing that you can get better at it, and then examining that setback in the context of the other really good things that are happening in your life, I think provides that lovely balance and blend that we spoke about a bit earlier. Sarah, you've been incredibly generous with your time today, and I'm very grateful to you, and I know all our listeners are very grateful as well. As we wrap up our conversation, I'm just curious to ask you, because you work with so many business people, so many entrepreneurs, so many achievers, if you had a couple of key things to take away just to try and improve our performance, try and improve our well-being, and try and improve our general outcomes in life, what sort of things would you like to leave the audience with so that they can take those away as practical and actionable steps so that they can make an impact in their own lives and their businesses?
Well, one of the things that I love to point out to people is that our physical environment predicts about 80% of what we do, about 80% of our behavior. And, you and I have just had this conversation about mindset, which is very important also. When we talk about peak performance, you need the mindset piece, but you also need to set up your physical environment to support being focused on the things that you want to do. So one of the things I think that's really, really important for people to take off this recording today is to really think about, how do you set up your environment to support doing the things that you want to be doing? And how do you create those routines and also set up your physical environment, like turn off your phone so it's not beeping and buzzing at you all the time, or make sure you have a day that you're only focused on client care and continuing education so that you can get in that really important work that only you can do. So how do you set that up in your physical environment to make sure that you do that. It has to do with your schedule. It has to do with how you train your office staff. It has to do with where you physically locate yourself at different times of the day. So I want to just add to the mix of the conversation here, making sure that you're setting up your physical environment to support productivity and doing the activities that you actually want to get done.
Again, I think that really is wonderful because it also ties into the fact that we spoke about earlier. It's your life. You get to create the rules, right? There is no one right way. You get to create an environment that works well for you, and you get to set a schedule that works right for you, and you get to surround yourself with the things and the people that work well for you. So again, just write the rules that work best for you. Is that essentially it?
Yeah, I think that's really important. And making sure that you are allowing yourself the possibility that you can change the environment, that you can move things around physically, psychologically, both of those things. Because oftentimes I'll talk to people and they'll say, well, that's just not possible. There's no way, like your client, that I could work out in the middle of the day. Well, why not? What would it take? And I'm willing to bet, even if you work for somebody else, if you made the case that you're going to be so much more productive in the day, if you had that hour or 2 hours to yourself, that they'd be on board.
I absolutely guarantee it, because that increase in productivity leads to so many other good things. It obviously leads to, from a commercial sense, revenues, but from other perspectives, it leads to staff well-being, staff retention, and so on and so forth. So there's also good arguments you can make to structure a routine that works for everyone. So again, I really resonate with that. Sarah, you are clearly at the top of your field. Ladies and gents, I know you're going to get a huge amount of value out of this particular podcast. Please do head across to truefocuscoaching.com or True Focus Coaching Tips, and Sarah's got a whole heap of resources there that I really commend to you. I'd also encourage you to find her on the social media channels. LinkedIn and Facebook are the two main ones there. You can find her on Twitter as well. And really let her know what's resonated with you from this particular episode, because I can tell you now, I've got a page of notes. And I'm going, yes, Jesse, I need to take that lesson as well. So from me to you, Sarah, thank you so much. I really am tremendously grateful.
Thanks so much. And I just want to encourage people to go to truefocustips.com. If you have any questions about the material that we've been talking about, there's some great information there that will give you even more and take things a little bit further. So if you found yourself writing, go there and you'll get some great information that you can easily download and just work with.
Yeah, and we're going to put that link in the show notes for everyone there. So please, when you come to the website, click on the show notes so you'll see that link ready to go for you as well. Once again, Sarah, thank you so much for your time. You're incredibly generous, and it is no wonder that when you look up people in your field for the work that you do, your name is at the top of the pile. Thank you once again.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Savvy Dentist podcast with Dr. Jessie Green. For more free tools and resources, join the free Facebook group. Visit drjessiegreen.com/Facebook. And for more episodes, visit drjessiegreen.com/savvydentist.